The federal layoffs are still paused, but this is heading straight to the Supreme Court. The Trump administration wants massive layoffs, and we have the new hiring plan getting mixed reactions. Services to millions of Americans hangs in the balance. Will Trump get his way, or will the courts slam their brakes on his plan? Let's get into it. Shortly after taking office, President Trump directed agencies to promptly undertake preparations to conduct large-scale reductions in force. The goal was always mass layoffs and dramatically reducing government spending in ways no one's ever seen before. You can look at what Ronald Reagan did, and you can look at what President Bill Clinton did, but it was never as aggressive and as fast as what we have witnessed in 2025. And the purge that we're currently witnessing now is unique for two big reasons. Number one, the probationary purge, and number two, not involving Congress. Also, with these RIFs, we're not talking about small numbers here. We're not talking about 10, 20, 30,000 here or there, small surgical cuts. We're talking about hundreds of thousands. We're talking about 700, 800,000, numbers that are close to 1 million. And on the surface, when you're talking to people that are a proponent of these cuts, that agree to these cuts or even celebrate it, their surface level arguments, they make sense. The government's too big. It's not efficient. Then there's the deep state argument. But then I was talking to a guy the other day. He was a budget analyst at HHS. He was fired. He looked at me and said, I never knew I was part of the deep state as a budget analyst. And obviously he's not, but he had to get fired over there. And HHS, along with a lot of other agencies, they're reversing their decisions because they realize they need certain people in those roles. But for this individual, the budget analyst, it's really coincidental that just a week after he was fired, on Indeed, there's a job listing for a contractor that does exactly what he was doing, but will probably cost the government at least 3 times more to pay for that contractor. Well, at least they can fire them whenever they want. They're not going to have any civil service protections in that role. So what are some of the reasons? What are some of the big reasons that Trump wants to shrink the government? It's to eliminate duplicative roles, cut unnecessary management layers, slash non-critical jobs, automate routine tasks, close regional offices, and reduce reliance on contractors. That last one is about cutting contracts, and there are thousands of contractors that have already been impacted. So all those reasons, they seem pretty good, right? If you were in a briefing room, if I was sitting there listening to that brief, I'd be like, yeah, well, that briefs pretty well. Let's get on board with that plan. But you have many experts that are criticizing this, saying it can cut or negatively impact essential services like fewer staff for disaster relief after a hurricane, longer wait time for veterans' health care, weaker food safety inspections, less oversight for disease prevention, and less Social Security support. The list goes on and on. We can make this a 2 to 3 hour video and just talk about all the services that are in jeopardy due to these cuts. And the Justice Department, their view set, as they're filing to the Supreme Court, their mindset is President Trump is the leader of the executive branch. He does not need Congress. But not everybody agrees. The whole situation really goes back to the San Francisco judge who said the president may broadly restructure federal agencies only when authorized by Congress. Then the Trump administration appealed to the Court of Appeals because you knew they were doing that. That was the next step in the playbook. That happened on May 30th. They lost that 2-1. The judges there said the executive order at issue here far exceeds the president's supervisory powers under the Constitution. They called it an unprecedented attempted restructuring of the federal government and its operations. So the one judge that was for the RIFs, that was supporting President Trump's plan for the massive layoffs, that judge was actually appointed by George W. Bush. So he's a Republican appointed judge. And the way that he felt about the situation, he thinks President Trump is going to win at the end. And he says that this delay is just causing a lot more harm than good. So the filing for the Supreme Court was filed on June 2nd, and we should hear something by June 9th. What's the most likely outcome? If I had to bet on it, I would say the Supreme Court is going to uphold the ruling of the lower court. They're going to uphold the injunction that was placed, meaning that these RIFs are not going to allow to continue in this way. And it's because of one word: impact. There's so many people that are sitting there right now or standing, and they say, the government could shrink by 50% tomorrow and nobody would know the difference. I think that's a naive way to look at the federal government, to look at the federal workforce. One thing that hasn't really been done here, I don't believe these RIF plans were put together with a lot of thought, with a deep analysis of the workforce. And it's clear that's the case because as the judge is receiving RIF plans, she's reading them, she's looking at them, and it's evident that the public will suffer a disruption of service or degraded service because of these cuts. So if you come forth with a RIF plan that makes sense, that's surgical with its cuts, that shows the public will not be negatively impacted, then perhaps a portion of them will ultimately go through, but not how they're positioned currently. Not with these 800,000 type numbers. That probably won't make it through. But I'm just speculating here. The U.S. Constitution, Article 2, outlines the president's powers as the head of the executive branch. So this is the main argument here. The Justice Department is saying that managing the personnel in the agency is core to Article 2, and Trump doesn't need approval from Congress. But the Ninth Circuit, they see it differently. They pointed to history, and why not? Look at history. Look at what FDR did. Look at Ronald Reagan. They had two things from Congress. They had awareness and they had approval through Congress. Congress controls the purse. Congress is the one that enables the agencies to have money. They create agencies, they abolish agencies. Look at Department of Homeland Security, 2002. They created that agency. Now, yeah, it's a big umbrella where there's a whole bunch of sub-agencies crammed underneath it. But there's this view that Congress won't abolish agencies. They've abolished agencies in the past, such as the U.S. Information Agency, USIA. It was created in 1953. It was abolished in 1999. Or the Interstate Commerce Commission, ICC. It was created in 1887, abolished in 1995. These agencies were abolished. They were removed essentially because there was overlap between other agencies. Like in one case, the State Department did the same thing. So if it's duplicative, yeah, sure. Consolidate and remove agencies. And if that means removing workers, maybe you have to do that. But it is up to Congress. So if they want to remove an agency, they pass legislation. They cut or eliminate the funding. They consolidate or transfer the functions to other departments. The federal budget for 2025 is something like $7 trillion. Agencies like HHS and the Veteran Affairs, they're spending billions of dollars. And Congress is looking at it that if there's dramatic personnel reductions, then the agencies are not going to be doing what Congress mandated them to do. And if it's so popular in this country right now to reduce these agencies or remove these agencies, if it is truly popular, then why will it not get the support in the House of Representatives? Why will it not get the support in the Senate? If your plan is that popular, you should have no issues with sending it through Congress. In addition to this, we had the newly released merit hiring plan revealed by the Office of Personnel Management last week. The thing that surprised me the most with this new plan was the 2-page federal resume. It can't be longer than 2 pages. I think that's a good thing. I think that could possibly speed up the hiring process, hopefully. But a lot of people were fixated, they were focused on the 4 essay questions. So if you're applying for a GS5 or above, there are 4 essay questions. People were concerned about this. Representative Lynch on the House Oversight and Reform Committee called it a blatant loyalty test, saying such a loyalty test is antithetical to the concept of an expert nonpartisan civil service. I don't really think it's that big of a deal because if you apply to other job announcements on usajobs.gov, you would see that there are times where you have to respond in essay format when you're inputting your answers. And you can't just copy and paste from your resume. But it's questions like, what is your favorite executive order and how will you implement it? That's what they were having a big problem with. Jacques Simon from a federal union said, Glorification of a political leader cannot be a prerequisite for obtaining a federal job. And it's true that federal workers, they take an oath of office. They take an oath to the Constitution, not to whoever happens to be occupying the seat or the office of the president. Now, what if you wanted to apply to a federal job, but you didn't really like his executive orders or whoever is the president at the moment? You don't really like their policies. Does that mean do not apply to a federal job? And if we're sticking with that example, if we're saying that in order to work for the federal government, you have to like those policies. If we're saying that, then what happens when another political party occupies the White House? Does that mean everybody who was pro-Trump or pro-conservative policies, they have to all leave now? So 2 million federal workers have to leave and be replaced by more progressive people? That doesn't really make a lot of sense. What does that say about institutional knowledge? This kind of ties into another move the Trump administration is making at the same time with Schedule F, or policy career, where they're making more federal workers at-will employees so that they can dismiss them with a snap of a finger, right? So they could be related, could be a lot more than the initial 50,000 that they anticipated. So 50,000 is the start, and then we can slowly start to see that number creep up. Now, in addition to this, we have some stuff going on at the VA right now, the melting of a hiring freeze. As you know, July 15th, we're under a federal hiring freeze. The VA saying they can't wait till July 15th because they need positions right now. They don't have those positions. It's going to negatively impact veterans, meaning less care, less benefits. That's going to cause a huge scandal. You can't have another scandal like you had in 2014. The scandal where veterans were waiting days, weeks, months to get an appointment, and many veterans died as a result of that. So the VA is hiring a lot more positions now. If you want to know more about that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.